In this presentation, we will work a special offer type problem within Excel. The data will be up top. We're going to enter that data into Excel down below. We're going to be creating our table down below. The data set is already in Excel. If you are working other types of problems such as this, we do recommend taking that data, putting it into Excel in a format such as this, a format where you have text and then the words or the numbers in separate cells so that you can refer back to them. And that'll make it easiest for you to work through these problems, practice these problems by referring to the cell references as you look at them within Excel. That'll be the most efficient way to study this kind of information, set it up, and use it within practice. So we have the information up top. We have the sales in units are going to be 300,000. Sales price per unit, $3.99. Notice the difference in terms of the formatting of the sales. I'm not using pennies up here, and I am using pennies when we need them. You could put pennies in there all the time. Again, these are just preferences that you got to learn when you start working with Excel. And then we have the cost for production, direct materials, direct labor, overhead, selling expenses, admin expenses, and then the total, which of course is the sum of all these. We're going to be discussing a special offer offered to buy units, 50,000 units, at a lower price, of course, the $336 rather than the $399. Should we accept the special offer? In order to do that, we need to basically think about what's going to happen with the special offer. We know that the direct, and part of that, of course, is breaking out the direct or the variable versus the overhead or the fixed costs. Because if we're thinking about a special offer, we're trying to think, is it going to increase revenues? And that's one of the major concerns we're going to have. Is it going to increase revenues? Is it going to mess up our relationship with other people and things like that? Is another concern we need to have. But just from a revenue standpoint, to answer the question is if it's going to be beneficial from a revenue standpoint, we have to say, all right, what are the variable costs? What are the fixed costs? What's going to be the effect on the bottom line if we accept this offer? So to do that, we're going to say, all right, the direct materials are all variable costs. And then the direct labor, we're going to say that there's a per unit direct labor cost would increase 50%. And that's going to be because we're going to have overtime. So if we accept this job, there's going to be overtime. There's going to be a 50% higher cost due to the overtime for the new units that we're going to create. It would also increase the admin expenses by 4,000. So this is going to be our data. We're going to take this into consideration, build a table to make this comparison to see if this would be a beneficial thing to do. We're going to work on some Excel skills just to build the table. So I'll make a fairly nice table and we'll try to build this thing from scratch. So first we're going to have the per unit amounts. And notice obviously when you put something together and you work these types of problems, whether it be in practice or for tests, part of the goal is to set up the table. So you want to be able to set this up. If you can do it in Excel, you can do it by hand. You need to visualize the table. It'll just take longer to do it by hand. So we're going to say these are going to be the per unit amounts. I'm going to give it the normal value, and these are going to be the headers. So you're imagining I'm making the headers of the table. And then we're going to say this is the new business. So this is going to be the per unit amounts we're going to have first. I'm going to format these and wrap the text here to fit them in one cell. Do that by going to the Home tab, Alignment. We're going to wrap the text. I'm going to center the text. I'm then going to center this between the two of these because this is a header that's covering those two units. So I'm going to highlight both of those. I'm not going to merge the cells. Instead, I'm going to right click on it, format the cells, and we're going to go to Alignment, Horizontal, and I'm going to center across the selection. And I'm going to say, okay. I think that's better than merging because merging will mess up some other types of formattings that we have. So that's one header. You don't need to make it as nice and pretty as this if you don't want to, right? We're just going to try to make a fairly nice table so that we can work our problem. And then we're going to have the totals are going to be totals here. That's going to include the normal value, the new business. So I'm just going to copy these. I'm going to highlight, copy, put these here, and we're going to say this will be the total. So I'm going to center this as well. I can format paint this, Home tab, format paint. And then I'm going to center this across the selection as well. So this is the total. So I'm going to right click here. We're going to go to Format Cells. Going to go to Alignment tab. And we're going to center across. So there we have that. This is going to be our headers. Typically, I'm going to make the headers black and white just to make them. So I'm going to highlight this whole thing. We're going to go to the Home tab, font. We're going to go to the bucket, make it black. Text, we'll make that white. So just to format that, bold it out. Okay, so then we're going to start to enter our data. We're going to start with the sales. So the sales in terms of units, I'm going to pull all the data from up top. That's going to be the practice I recommend practicing doing. So we're going to say this equals, and we're going to go up top and say the $3.99 normal business tab. Now notice I have formatted my cells in general not to have decimals. So anytime I need decimals, I need to add them. You could format your worksheet to default to have decimals everywhere. That works too. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, numbers, increase the decimals. So I see the $3.99. So, and we want to practice these things as we work these types of tables and problems within Excel, the formatting. Then the new business is going to be equal to this 336. So I'm going to say equals to 336. Home tab, numbers, increase the decimals. So there's the 336. And then we're going to say that we're going to have the normal value, which is going to be equal to the 399 times the normal sales that we're going to have, 300,000. The the new business that we're going to have is going to be equal to the 336 times the 50,000 new units that we're going to have. And then if we sum those two up, we equals the sum. Here's what we have. So here's our normal business. Here's the new business. Obviously, our revenue would go up because we have more revenue. So then we're going to take a look at our variable costs, colon. And I'm going to say equals. I'm going to pull this information from up top. I'm going to say equals the direct materials. And so the direct materials, and we could pull them all down, equals the direct labor and the variable overhead equals the overhead, the variable portion. So let's actually type that one in, variable overhead, because there's a fixed and variable portion of the overhead. I'm going to highlight these. We're going to go to the Home tab, alignment, increase the indentation. And then we're going to figure out the normal value for these items. Now the data up top gave us the totals and they gave us the sales number. So in order to get the value per unit, then we're just going to take the 384,000 divided by the number of units, 300,000. And that gives us the 128 for the direct materials. And we'll do that all the way down. We'll take the 96,000 over the 300,000. That gives us our 32 cents for the direct labor. And then the overhead has 35% fixed. So obviously if we take 100% minus 0.35, 65% is variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 288,000 divided by the 300,000 times 0.65, and then we get our 0.624. So that's going to be a little bit more complex because, of course, we have the variable and fixed portion. Let's try to do that with formulas down here. So we'll do that with just formulas. So I'm going to say the normal cost is going to be equal to, for the direct materials, the 384,000 divided by the number of units, which is the 300,000. And then we're going to have to format that cell, Home tab, alignment, add decimals. I'll make 3 decimals. We'll take it out beyond pennies. And then we're going to say the direct labor equals the labor divided by the sales units. Enter. And again, Home tab, numbers, increase decimal. And then we'll take the overhead, and it's going to be equal to the overhead amount times, and then I'm going to say brackets 1 minus 0.35, and that'll give us the variable portion. If 35% is fixed, 1 minus 0.35 is variable. So we're going to take that whole thing, and we probably don't need brackets. I'll put brackets around it just in case. And we'll divide it by the number of units, 300,000. And that gives us, if we put our cursor back on Home tab, alignment, increase indenting, that 0.624. So there's our 0.624. That's going to be our total variable costs. So I'm going to give that our total variable costs. And let's do it this way. Total variable costs. I'm going to indent that 2 times. Home tab, alignment, increase the indenting. So we've got the colon indented once, indented twice. Then we'll say equals the sum of those items. Once again, home tab, alignment, increase the indenting. 3 decimals. I'm going to underline here, home tab, font, underline. And there we have that. Now we're going to do the same for our new business, for the new items, the new units, the 50,000 units here. So for the direct materials, it's going to be the same. It's all variable. So I'm just going to say direct materials equals the same number. Home tab, alignment, increase the decimals. Now the direct labor is going to increase by 50% due to the overtime that we're going to have for the new units we're going to be creating. So prior to this, we had 0.32 times 0.5 plus 0.32, right? It's going to be the 48 cents per unit. We could do that a little bit faster. 0.32 times 1.5, 150%, 100% plus 50%. And that gives us our same 0.48. So let's do that here. We're going to say, all right, this equals this number times 1.5. And we'll go to the home tab, add decimals. Whoop, one too many. So let's do that. And then the variable overhead. The variable overhead is going to remain the same. There's no change there. So we'll say that equals the same number. Home tab, number, increase the decimals. Okay, we're going to sum this up. I'm going to pull this number over because it's going to be the same formula. So I'm going to autofill this across. And then I'm going to underline this. Home tab, font, underline. Okay, there we have it. Now we're just going to use these numbers to fill out our normal totals and our new business totals. So for the variable direct materials, it's just going to equal the 1.28 times the number of units, 300,000. For the direct labor, it's going to equal the 0.32 times our total, 300,000. And then for the variable overhead, it's going to equal the 0.624 times the total once again. And then with the new business, it's going to equal the 1.28 on the new business side times the number of units, 50,000. And then for the direct labor, it's going to equal the 0.48 times the new units we're going to create, 50,000. And then for the overhead, it's going to equal the 0.624 times the new units we're going to create, 50,000. There we have it. Now I'm going to sum these up, equals the sum of these items. I'm going to autofill that across. So we'll put our cursor here, autofill it across. Do some formatting. I'm going to highlight this. Home tab, font, group, underline. And then I'll total this up to have the total between the normal and new equals the sum of these two items. And then we'll autofill that down. I'm going to put my cursor on autofill, fill that down. Underline this, home tab, font, underline. Sum this up. I'm going to autofill to do that. So autofill here, autofill across, and we'll see that sums up. So there we have it. We're at the 786.4 for the variable costs. Now we can get our contribution margin. So the contribution margin, you'll recall, is equal to, and we could do this on a per unit basis as well. So the 399 minus the 2.224, and we'll add decimals, home tab, numbers, decimals, and one less decimal. Whoop, I keep on adding them. I'm trying to take them one away there. All right. And then we'll copy this across. We'll autofill this to here. And then we'll do the same thing here. I won't autofill because it'll change the format. We could copy and paste the formula or just type it in there again. This equals this number, sales minus the variable costs. And now we might want to autofill because these formatted cells are all the same. Autofill here, pull it across. I'm going to underline these. So I'm going to highlight these, Home tab, font, underline, and there we are in our contribution margin. Now we're going to take a look at our fixed costs. So we're going to say, all right, fixed costs are the next items that we will have. There's not going to be any per unit numbers here because they're fixed. So they're the same per unit. We're just going to pull them right over into the totals. So I'm going to pull these down with a formula. We're going to say this equals, and we're looking for the fixed overhead now. And again, that one's a little bit different, so we might want to type that one in there. It's going to be fixed overhead. All right, the next one will be the same. We're going to say this equals, and then the selling is a fixed cost. And then we're going to say this equals, and the admin is a fixed cost. So we'll pull those down. And then that's going to give us the total fixed costs. So we'll say total fixed costs. I'm going to indent these. I'm going to highlight these. Home tab, alignment, increase the indenting. I'm going to go to the total. Home tab, alignment group, increase indenting. And then we're just going to go into our normal balance item, line, column, and say this equals. And then we're going to pick up our normal number for the overhead. It's going to be this total minus the variable portion. So here's the variable portion up top. That's going to give us the fixed portion. Or we could say this total times 0.35, which should give us the same number because 35% was fixed. So we could say 288000 times 0.35. That would be another way to do it. Obviously, we took the other portion of it and put it up here. So a couple ways we can get to that. We're going to say this other one's going to say equals, and we'll say this is the selling expenses. And then the admin equals, and this is going to be the admin expenses. Okay, and then for the new business, and we could total that up here if we want to do that now. There we have it. I'm going to underline this, Home tab, font, underline. Now on the new business, the only new expense we have that's fixed is this 4,000. We're saying the admin would increase by 4,000 fixed costs. Now at a variable rate, a fixed 4,000. All right, so we're going to say admin is going to increase by 4,000. If we do this, there we have it. We can sum this total across. That's the only change. Then we can sum them across over here. Here's our total column equals the sum of these two columns. Whoop, something went wrong there. I think I included the column I'm in. Equals the sum of these two columns, and then we'll autofill that down. Then we'll highlight these items. We'll make it underline, and then we can autofill this across. We could then double under. Well, that's going to be our total costs. We're not there yet. So there's our fixed costs, and that's going to give us our operating income. So I'm going to say, all right, operating income is now going to be equal to the contribution margin minus the fixed cost. So we'll do that same thing here. It's going to be the contribution margin minus the fixed cost for the new work equals contribution margin minus the fixed costs. So there we have it. We can underline this, Home tab, font, underline. We could double underline this if we so choose, highlighting these items, Home tab, font, double underline. If we want to make this blue and put brackets around it, we can highlight it, right click, paint. If you don't have a blue here, you can go to this thing, standard, blue, and then, all right, and Home tab, font, and we can put grid lines around it. So here's going to be our format. So the new job then is increasing 44,800 to our bottom line. So it looks like from just a purely financial perspective, it looks like a good move to have. Now, note again, there could be other things involved because we don't want other customers to feel like we're giving a discount to just a random person, right? So we could have other kind of marketing and relational problems with a deal such as this. We also want to make sure that we're not operating at capacity. Otherwise, it could change our overhead costs to make sure that those are okay. But purely from a financial perspective, if there's nothing else that was involved in this, then it looks like it's going to benefit the bottom line, of course, by the 44.8 amount, and therefore financially good.